Lisa had always been the girl who followed the rules. In school, she turned in assignments early. At work, she stayed late to make sure everything was perfect. When her friends made wild plans for weekend trips, she chose to save money instead. Everyone said she was smart, responsible, and had her life figured out. But sitting in her corner office on the 23rd floor, Lisa felt anything but smart. The city stretched out below her through floor-to-ceiling windows, and she wondered when her life had become so predictable. Every day was the same. Wake up at 6, coffee and toast, kiss her husband goodbye, drive to work, sit in meetings, drive home, make dinner, watch TV and sleep. Repeat. Her marriage to Tom should have been perfect on paper. He was a lawyer, she worked in marketing, and together they made good money. They lived in a nice apartment with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. Their friends envied their lifestyle. Their parents were proud. But Lisa felt like she was living someone else's dream. The first crack in her perfect world appeared on a Tuesday morning. Tom was rushing out the door, coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other. She tried to tell him about a presentation she was nervous about, but he was already checking his phone. "That's nice, honey," he said without looking up. "I'll be home late tonight. Don't wait up." The door closed behind him, and Lisa stood alone in their pristine kitchen. When was the last time they had talked about something that mattered? When was the last time they laughed together? She couldn't remember. At work, Lisa threw herself into campaigns for products she didn't care about. She created slogans for breakfast, cereals, and designed ads for insurance companies. Her boss praised her creativity, but she felt like she was sleepwalking through her days. During lunch breaks, she would sit in the company cafeteria and watch other people. Were they happy? Did they feel alive? The evenings were the hardest. Tom would come home exhausted, grab dinner from the fridge, and disappear into his home office. She could hear him on conference calls until late at night. Sometimes she wondered if he would notice if she just disappeared. One evening, Lisa decided to cook Tom's favorite meal. She spent 2 hours making everything from scratch, set candles on the table, and even put on the dress he used to compliment. When he walked through the door, she felt hopeful for the first time in months. "Dinner smells great," Tom said, loosening his tie. But instead of sitting down, he grabbed a plate and headed toward his office. "I've got this big case, you know how it is." Lisa watched him walk away, taking her hopes with him. She sat alone at the beautifully set table, surrounded by food that would go cold and candles that would burn down to nothing. That night, she realized they weren't living together anymore. They were just two people who happened to share the same address. The loneliness grew heavier each day. Lisa started taking longer routes home from work, driving through neighborhoods where families sat on front porches and couples walked hand in hand. She envied the woman at the grocery store, whose husband called to ask if she needed anything. She watched elderly couples at coffee shops sharing newspapers and felt a pain in her chest. At work, Lisa began to notice things she had ignored before. Her colleague Jennifer talked excitedly about weekend hiking trips with her boyfriend. The security guard Robert always smiled when he talked about his wife's cooking. Even her assistant seemed more passionate about planning her vacation than Lisa felt about anything in her life. Lisa started questioning every choice that had brought her to this point. She had picked Tom because he was stable and ambitious. She had chosen her career because it paid well and looked impressive. She had bought the apartment because it was in the right neighborhood. But when had she last done something because it made her happy? The breaking point came on a Friday night. Tom was working late again, and Lisa found herself alone with a bottle of wine and old photo albums. She flipped through pictures from college, from early dates with Tom, from their wedding day. In the early photos, her smile looked genuine. Her eyes were bright with possibility. But as the years went on, she watched herself fade. Even in her wedding photos, something seemed missing. She found a picture of herself from college, laughing with friends at some party she could barely remember. The girl in that photo looked fearless, ready to take on the world. What had happened to her? When had she become so careful, so afraid of making waves? That night, Lisa made a decision. She couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change, even if she didn't know what that something was yet. She was tired of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. She was tired of being grateful for a life that felt like a beautiful prison. The question was, what would she do about it, and more importantly, did she have the courage to do it? The business conference in Portland came at the perfect time. Lisa needed a break from her routine, even if it meant sitting through boring presentations about digital marketing trends. She packed her bags with relief, looking forward to 3 days away from the suffocating atmosphere at home. The hotel was nothing special, but it felt like freedom. Lisa could eat breakfast without Tom rushing past her. She could take her time getting ready without hearing about his important meetings. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. On the second day of the conference, Lisa was grabbing coffee during a break when someone called her name. She turned around and felt her heart skip a beat. Standing behind her was David, her college boyfriend from what felt like another lifetime. "Lisa?" "I can't believe it," David said, his face lighting up with genuine surprise. "What are the odds?" They hugged awkwardly, both laughing at how strange it was to meet like this. David looked older, of course, but his eyes still had that spark she remembered. His hair was a little grayer, and he had laugh lines around his eyes that made him look even more attractive than she remembered. "What are you doing here?" Lisa asked, feeling suddenly self-conscious about her business suit and perfectly styled hair. "I'm a photographer now," David said, holding up his camera bag. "I'm documenting small businesses for a magazine article. What about you, still conquering the corporate world?" They found a quiet corner in the hotel lobby and talked for hours. David told her about his journey from business school dropout to freelance photographer. He traveled constantly, capturing stories of people who followed their dreams despite the risks. His passion was infectious, and Lisa found herself remembering what it felt like to care deeply about something. "I always wondered what happened to you," David said softly. "You used to talk about writing that novel, remember? And traveling to Europe after graduation." Lisa felt a pang of sadness. She had forgotten about those dreams, pushed them aside for more practical goals. "Life happened, I guess. Responsibilities, you know." "Do you ever miss it?" David asked. That feeling of thinking anything was possible? The question hit her harder than she expected. Yes, she missed it desperately. She missed the girl who stayed up all night writing stories that no one would ever read. She missed dreaming about adventures instead of calculating retirement savings. They met for dinner that evening, and Lisa felt more alive than she had in years. David listened when she talked, really listened. He asked questions about her thoughts, not just her work schedule. When she mentioned she had stopped writing, he looked genuinely sad. "That's a real loss," he said. "You had such a unique voice. Your stories always made people feel something." Lisa had forgotten that writing used to make her happy. In college, she would lose herself in creating characters and worlds. Now she only wrote marketing copy designed to make people buy things they didn't need. On their last evening together, they walked through the city streets. David showed her how to see ordinary moments through a photographer's eyes. A couple sharing ice cream became a story about simple joy. An elderly man feeding pigeons became a meditation on loneliness and connection. "This is how I see the world now," David explained. "Every person has a story worth telling. Every moment has beauty if you know how to look for it." Lisa realized she had stopped looking for beauty anywhere. Her days were about efficiency and productivity, not wonder or connection. When it was time to say goodbye, David hugged her tightly. "Promise me you'll start writing again," he said. "The world needs your stories." Flying back to Chicago, Lisa stared out the airplane window and felt something shifting inside her. The 3 days with David had reminded her of who she used to be, and more importantly, who she still could be. But returning to her real life felt like putting on a costume that no longer fit. The contrast hit Lisa like a wall when she walked into her apartment. Everything was exactly as she had left it, spotless, organized, and lifeless. Tom was already asleep, and she was grateful not to have to pretend everything was normal. How could she explain that 3 days away had changed everything? The next morning, Tom barely looked up from his phone when she tried to tell him about the conference. "That's nice, honey," he said automatically, the same response he gave to everything she said. Lisa realized he could have been gone for 3 weeks and Tom probably wouldn't have noticed. At work, Lisa found it impossible to concentrate. Her colleagues talked about weekend plans and office gossip, but she felt disconnected from it all. During her lunch break, she walked to a nearby bookstore and found herself in the creative writing section. She picked up a notebook and a pen, feeling both excited and terrified. That evening, she tried to reconnect with Tom. She suggested they cook dinner together, something they used to enjoy, but Tom was already on his laptop reviewing case files. "Can we just talk?" Lisa asked, sitting down across from him. "Really? Talk? Not about work or schedules or bills, about us." Tom looked annoyed. "What's wrong with you lately? You've been acting strange since you got back from Portland." "I've been thinking about our relationship," Lisa said carefully. "Don't you miss how we used to be? We used to laugh together, dream together. We're adults now, Lisa. We have responsibilities. We can't act like college kids forever." But that was exactly what Lisa wanted to do. She wanted to feel alive again, to believe in possibilities instead of just going through the motions. Over the following weeks, Lisa tried everything to bridge the gap between them. She planned date nights that Tom canceled for work. She suggested weekend trips that he said were too expensive. She bought books they could read together, but Tom only read legal journals. The loneliness became unbearable. Lisa started writing, again pouring her feelings into stories about people trapped in lives they never wanted. She wrote during lunch breaks, on weekend mornings while Tom slept, late at night when he was working. Writing felt like coming home to herself. One Friday evening, Lisa prepared Tom's favorite meal and waited for him to come home. She had practiced what she wanted to say, how she would explain that they needed to find their way back to each other. She lit candles and opened a bottle of wine, hoping to create the kind of romantic evening they used to share. When Tom walked in, he looked tired and distracted. "Smells good," he said, kissing her forehead absent-mindedly. "But I need to review these contracts tonight. Big meeting on Monday." "Tom, please," Lisa said, catching his arm. "Can't work wait just one evening? I feel like we never spend time together anymore." "Don't be dramatic," Tom said, pulling away. "We spend time together. We live in the same house, don't we?" That was the moment Lisa realized their marriage was already over. They weren't partners anymore, just roommates splitting expenses. Tom was content with their arrangement, but Lisa was dying inside. That night, as Tom worked in his office, Lisa sat alone at their dining table and made a decision. She couldn't keep living like this, pretending to be satisfied with crumbs of attention and affection. She deserved more than this, and deep down, so did Tom. Something had to change, and Lisa finally understood that she would have to be the one to change. The weeks that followed felt like living in slow motion. Lisa went through her daily routine like an actor playing a role she had grown tired of. She smiled at coworkers, attended meetings, and came home to a husband who treated her like furniture. But inside, something was building up like pressure in a kettle. She had tried everything she could think of to save her marriage. Date nights, surprise dinners, heartfelt conversations, even couples therapy suggestions that Tom dismissed as unnecessary. Nothing worked because Tom didn't see a problem. He was comfortable with their arrangement, satisfied with a relationship that required no emotional investment from him. Lisa started paying attention to other couples wherever she went. At restaurants, she watched how some pairs talked excitedly while others sat in silence. At the grocery store, she noticed which couples made decisions together and which ones seemed to live separate lives. She realized that she and Tom had become one of those couples who shared space but nothing else. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in March. Lisa had spent the day at a company retreat where they did team-building exercises. One activity asked them to share something they were passionate about. When it was Lisa's turn, she talked about writing, surprising herself with how emotional she became. Her colleagues seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about her stories and encouraging her to share them someday. Driving home, Lisa felt energized for the first time in months. She had an idea for a story about a woman who rediscovers herself after years of living for everyone else. She couldn't wait to start writing, to pour all her feelings onto paper. She walked into the apartment bubbling with excitement, ready to share her day with Tom. She found him in his office, as usual, surrounded by legal documents and empty coffee cups. The room smelled stale, like it hadn't been aired out in days. "Tom," she said, knocking gently on the doorframe. "Can I tell you about my day?" He looked up briefly, then back at his computer screen. "Can it wait? I'm trying to finish this brief." "It'll just take a minute," Lisa said, stepping into the room. "Something really interesting happened today." Tom sighed heavily, the kind of sigh that made Lisa feel like she was bothering him. "What is it?" Lisa started telling him about the retreat, about how talking about writing had made her feel alive again. She explained her story idea, how she wanted to start writing seriously again, maybe even take a creative writing class. Tom nodded occasionally, but his eyes kept drifting back to his computer. When she finished, he said, "That's nice, honey. Writing is a good hobby." "It's not a hobby," Lisa said quietly. "It's something I'm passionate about. Something that makes me feel like myself again." "Right," Tom said, already turning back to his work. "Just don't let it interfere with your real job." That comment hit Lisa like a physical blow. Her real job. As if the thing that brought her joy and purpose was somehow less important than creating advertisements for products nobody needed. Lisa stood in the doorway watching Tom type, completely absorbed in his work, having already forgotten their conversation. She realized that this was her life. She could share her deepest dreams and fears with this man, and he would treat them like background noise. That night, Lisa lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Tom slept peacefully beside her. She thought about all the conversations they never had, all the moments of connection they had missed, all the ways they had grown apart without either of them trying to stop it. She got up quietly and went to the living room, sitting on the couch in the dark. Outside, the city was quieter but never completely silent. Cars passed occasionally, their headlights sweeping across the walls. Lisa wondered about the people in those cars. Were they going home to someone who cared about their dreams? Were they rushing to meet someone who made them laugh? For the first time, Lisa allowed herself to imagine a different life. A life where she came home to someone who asked about her writing, who encouraged her creativity, who saw her as a whole person instead of just a reliable presence. The thought scared her, but it also filled her with longing. She thought about David and their conversations in Portland. He had listened to every word she said, remembered details about her college dreams, encouraged her to pursue her passions. In 3 days, he had shown her more genuine interest than Tom had in 3 years. Lisa realized she had been trying to save a marriage that Tom didn't even know was broken. She had been fighting alone for something they had both already lost. The truth was painful but also liberating. They weren't right for each other anymore, and maybe they never had been. Sitting in that dark living room, Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. She couldn't keep hoping that Tom would suddenly become the partner she needed. And she couldn't keep sacrificing her own happiness for a relationship that brought neither of them joy. Tomorrow she would stop pretending. Tomorrow she would finally be honest about what she needed and what she was willing to accept. The thought terrified her, but it also felt like the first honest thing she had felt in years. The next evening, Lisa stood outside Tom's office door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She had spent the entire day thinking about what she would say, how she would explain that their marriage needed to change or it would end. She had practiced the words in her head during meetings, on her lunch break, during the drive home. But, now facing the moment of truth, all her prepared speeches seemed inadequate. How do you tell someone that you've been slowly disappearing in your relationship with them? How do you explain that love isn't enough if it doesn't come with attention, respect, and genuine care? Lisa knocked on the doorframe and stepped into the room. Tom was exactly where she had left him the night before, hunched over his laptop, papers scattered everywhere. He looked up with that same slightly annoyed expression he always wore when she interrupted his work. "Tom," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "we need to talk. Really talk this time." Something in her tone made him look at her more carefully. "Is everything okay?" Lisa almost laughed at the question. When was the last time everything had been okay between them? But she took a deep breath and sat down in the chair across from his desk. "No," she said simply. "Everything is not okay. We are not okay." Tom leaned back in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "What's wrong now, Lisa? I thought we talked about this." "We never talk about anything," Lisa said. "That's the problem. When was the last time you asked me how I'm feeling? When was the last time we had a real conversation about something that matters?" "We talk all the time," Tom said defensively. "Just this morning I asked if you needed anything from the store." Lisa felt tears starting to form, but she blinked them back. This was too important for crying. "That's not talking, Tom. That's just logistics. When was the last time you asked about my dreams, my fears, my hopes for the future?" Tom looked genuinely confused, as if she was speaking a foreign language. "I don't understand what you want from me, Lisa. We have a good life. We both have successful careers, a nice home, financial security. Isn't that enough?" "No," Lisa said, quietly. "It's not enough for me anymore." The silence that followed felt heavy and final. Tom stared at her like she was a stranger, someone he had never seen before. In a way, that was true. The real Lisa had been hiding for so long that even she had forgotten who she was. "I need more than this," Lisa continued. "I need a partner who cares about what I'm passionate about. I need someone who wants to know what I'm thinking, not just what I'm cooking for dinner. I need to feel like I matter to the person I'm married to." Tom's face went through several expressions: confusion, irritation, and finally something that looked like fear. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" The word hung in the air between them like a challenge. Lisa hadn't planned to say it so directly, but hearing it out loud felt both terrifying and relieving. "I'm saying our marriage needs to change completely, or yes, maybe we should consider ending it," Lisa said. "I can't keep living like we're just roommates who split the bills." Tom was quiet for a long time, staring down at his hands. When he finally looked up, his expression was sad but not surprised. "I guess I always knew you weren't happy," he admitted. "I just thought, I hoped it would get better eventually." "It can't get better if we don't try to make it better," Lisa said gently. "And I've been trying alone for a long time now." They talked for hours that night, more honestly than they had in years. Tom admitted that he had buried himself in work to avoid dealing with their problems. Lisa explained how lonely and invisible she had felt. They both acknowledged that they had grown into different people who wanted different things from life. By the end of the conversation, they both knew their marriage was over. There was no anger, no dramatic fight, just the quiet recognition that they had been holding on to something that had already died. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. They divided their possessions fairly and parted ways with mutual respect, but no regret. Tom continued his successful legal career, eventually finding someone who was content with the same kind of partnership he preferred. Lisa quit her marketing job and started freelancing as a copywriter while pursuing her real passion for creative writing. She moved to a smaller